Howdy, howdy, everyone. Chris here, and welcome to Garage Noise. On this episode, we're going to black out the trim on this vehicle. I'm going to share with you how we do it and how you can do it at home. This trim has been damaged by the sun. It's starting to oxidize, and it's got some stains on it that just will not polish out. So what we're going to do is black this out today. I'm going to share with you how we do it. Now, the first thing we wanted to do was to tape up this trim around the vehicle, because we need to do some sanding on this in preparation for paint. The first step is to mask off your trim or the areas that you want to have painted. So it's very important that you do a nice tight masking job. We're using a combination of a 3/4 inch tape and a 1.5 inch tape to get this trim masked off and ready to be sanded. Step 2 is to clean this trim really well before you start sanding. We use wax and grease remover to remove any oils or contaminants on this trim. The next step is we want to sand this to promote adhesion of the paint. Now, the sand scratches will create a mechanical bond between the part and the paint. I like to use 320 grit sandpaper in this situation. You could use 600, but 320 is a little bit coarser. It's going to create a better mechanical bond, in my opinion. So what I'm using is a 320 grit scuff pad, and I'm going around all the edges, and it's very important that you get down in all the edges close to the edge, because that, if it ends up peeling, that's where it's going to peel. But we are going to use some different products to promote adhesion. And one of those things is this Autobody adhesion promoter. So before we apply our paint, we're going to spray this adhesion promoter on, and that'll help by also creating a chemical bond along with the mechanical bond. It's worth mentioning that there are some other things you could do to promote adhesion to your parts, and one of those things would be to primer these parts before we painted. You would have to primer it, then sand it down, and then you could apply your paint. The other thing would be to use a sealer instead of a primer. You could seal it before you painted. That would also help promote adhesion. In this case, we're not going to do either one of those. We're going to use the adhesion promoter and then paint it. The next step, if you chose, would be to mask off the entire vehicle. In this case, we used automotive plastic to mask off the rest of the vehicle. This is specially treated plastic that's going to allow paint to stick to it and not peel off during the painting process. So once we've covered the car with plastic, we simply go around and we cut out the plastic that's covering the trim that we're going to paint. So the next step is we want to clean it once again before we apply our paint. So you want to clean it with an automotive prep solvent. You could use a rubbing alcohol, or you could use a water-based cleaner of some kind. But you want to make sure it's nice and clean before you start applying your paint. You can never get it clean enough. If it does have oils or contaminants on it, then it could react to the paint. Then right before we apply the adhesion promoter, you want to tack rag it to clean off any dust or lint. Next, we're going to apply the adhesion promoter, and it doesn't really matter what brand adhesion promoter you use. I use the Autobody and a product called Bulldog. But if you're interested in any of the tools or products I use, I have a link to my storefront down in the description, and there I have organized and categorized all the tools and products I use. It makes it easy to find. It also helps support the channel. I like to apply 2 coats of adhesion promoter. We'll spray one on, we'll wait just a few minutes, and then we'll spray another coat on, and then we'll let it flash off for a few more minutes, and then we can apply our satin black paint. Now we're going to apply the second coat here, and you don't have to put it on super wet. A good medium coat will do. This is the satin black we're going to be using today. This is a catalyzed satin black, so it's 2 parts. It's the paint and then it's the activator, but it's going to make it more durable in the sun and elements. Now, Spray Max makes a good aerosol satin black if you don't want to use a spray gun, but in this case, I'm going to use my 3M Performance gun. I've got my fan pattern dialed back just a bit so it's not quite as wide, and I'm just going to carefully put the first coat on here. We're going to put it on dry. We're not going to try and put it on super wet. We just want to get a good base on there to start with. Now, as far as my volume, I've got it 2 turns out from closed. That's going to create enough material to make this layout smooth. And we'll make some adjustments as we put on our second and third coat. But if you're going to spray with an aerosol can, put your first coat on light. You don't want to put it on super heavy, and then build it up as it goes. Now, you don't want to continue putting it on dry either. So the first coat, you want to put it on dry to medium, and then the second coat, medium to wet. Now we have our first coat on, and we're going to let this flash off for about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and put another medium coat on. Now I'm going to apply the second coat, and I'm going to put this coat on a little heavier, medium to wet. So I've opened up my spray pattern just a little bit so I have a little bit larger coverage, and what I'm doing is I'm going to do it in sections. I'm doing one section, getting it wet and how I want it to look, and then I'll move on to the next section. That way I'm always following that wet edge around the vehicle. Now I'm going to apply the third and final coat of this paint, and then we'll unbag it, unmask it, take a good look at it, and see how it turned out. And there you go. There it is, all done. I think it really looks sharp. It really changed the appearance of this vehicle and looks much better than that tattered trim that was on it. So this is a project that you can easily do at home. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please do me a favor, like and subscribe. I think you're going to enjoy the content on my channel. I appreciate each and every one of you watching, and we'll see you next time on Garage Noise.